We're going live. Being present to our inner guidance is the conversation today with the lovely ladies. It looks like tonight we have Tanya in Australia, Maria in Toronto, Mama Joe just north of Toronto. So Tanya's actually in Brisbane. Australia's a big place, so I should narrow it down. Okay, like closer there. Okay, I'm a Mi'kmaq land, and we're just gonna share some of our experiences about what it's like for us when we can trust our guidance and be present to the flow. I'm just gonna say for me, it's like I get more time. Right? I can just wait patiently instead of thinking I gotta do, I wait patiently, and then it says, go now, do this now. And then I connect at the right time. There's nobody in the lineup. You get green lights. The person is pulling out of their driveway that you had to drop something off, right? Or wherever you met, like everything is synchronistic. You pick up the phone, they're there, the text, the Facebook, whatever. It all just is in that moment. And things can get, it's like time stands still because so much can happen in such a short period of time. And even this morning, I had somebody say to me, oh, there's time is just whipping by. And I feel quite the opposite. I feel like time has slowed down for me over the last few years. Like a moment can be so large because it's a moment, and then it's a moment, and then it's a moment.
I find that that relationships with others have a role to play, because when you're living with deadlines several during the week and certain get-togethers, that various things that you are involved in and you have responsibilities where that give you a different time flow than the quiet time, than the time you have in solitude or with somebody you trust, where it's still very quiet and slow. So I'm experiencing the very fast flow, and then I'm experiencing the extended, slow, be in the moment, and kind of even in the fast pace, that accuracy becomes extremely important, in what you say, in what is the impact, and in writing, typos, etc. And, even then, there are those moments when you take a few minutes or a few seconds, and the slow comes in for a few seconds. And I have ways. I look out the window and suddenly time slowed. That's all. In meetings, I prefer to sit where I can face the window. It's odd. It's really weird.
I was just thinking while you're talking that when I was comparing the difference between when you're feeling and being aware of being present, right, and when you're not, because I can have experiences where I'm doing nothing. There's no demands on me. There's no need to go out and do anything there. I don't have a schedule or anything planned, and yet I can feel rushed or feel, which I think is where anxiety comes into it, because you feel like you have to, and it's even though you're doing nothing, you're not in the present moment. It doesn't always have to be that I've got all of these things to do. So it was interesting in my thought process while you were talking, because the past few weeks I've noticed things have happened where I've felt, oh, I must do, and I've made myself feel like there is a timeline and a this and a that, even though there is no demand on me. So in these past few weeks, I've been taking myself back into doing small, deliberate, conscious actions to make myself aware of being present in the moment. Simply just sitting on my patio and taking some sun and this, and it really refocuses me into what's important, not what's in my headspace and my to-do list. And it's been really, really good, because then it's like, you know, sometimes you get so caught up in things that you don't realize that you're doing it, that you're way out in, you know, in the field, that you're so caught up in this that you don't even realize that you're not present. You're thinking, I'm present, I'm doing this, but I'm not. So yeah, it's been really lovely. And the way that I'm moving now, since I've stepped back into my conscious self-dedicated moments, is good. I'm seeing things freshly, like things are more clearer, things are more slower, things are more feeling better in my body. So yeah, I'm enjoying things more, even though I've got nothing to do per se.
Doing nothing is still doing something.
Right. But then, you know, when you throw your silly thoughts, you know, the things that you want to chastise yourself about, or criticize yourself about, or whatever it is that we do to ourselves, even doing nothing, you know, people find fault in that. I should be doing something. And it's like, should you? Do you have to? What's more important? You know, you running yourself ragged if you, I mean, there's things you have to do, fair enough, but it's more important to look after yourself first.
Yeah.
May the fern have a turn. It has something to say.
Go ahead, Fern.
Okay, thank you. It's been listening and getting the vibration, the meaning of the conversation, and it wanted to say something when it heard, even when you're not doing anything, you're doing something. So the fern now is saying, continuing, you think I'm still, you think I'm stationary, and I've just poked a new shoot through the ground in the last few hours. And I'm aware of everything. I'm hearing what you're saying through your vibration. Thank you for allowing me a voice.
Well, thank you, Maria, for being the voice of the fern. And I so appreciate that the fern could actually join the conversation, because I feel like that's where we're going to as we trust our intuition more, is that these conversations where other people would be like, oh, come on, the plant didn't really say anything. Okay. You know, it's that sense of, oh, you're not really hearing voices, right? Are you? You know, it's those ideas that people, you didn't really see anything, that really didn't happen. I think all that's going away. I think people are opening their hearts and they're really recognizing that life is beyond their imagination, and it is maybe they read a book before about the plants talking, or they watched a Disney movie, or I remember watching a TV show when I was a kid, HR Puff and stuff, the trees all had faces and talked. So, you know, that is in my imagination. What's beyond my imagination, I can't even imagine, because I haven't imagined it yet.
The ancient people, sometimes these days they're called indigenous. The ancient people, the ancient cultures knew that everything had consciousness. And they talked about the tree nation, the stone nation, whatever it is. Different cultures have different names for it, but they always had it. They knew it. And many of them, I suppose many of them do it today too. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm known for talking to my rocks. So
All right. I
well, not just my rocks, but I yes, I agree with you. Yes.
We're not laughing at each other. Do you notice?
No, yeah.
Each other.
Yeah.
Joanne is smiling, but she hasn't spoken.
I have my little rock right here. I have actually about 6 or 7 of them that I got on the beach when I was at Miss Q visiting Jack. And it was funny because this new friend that I've befriended in the last week or two said, yeah, I was collecting a stick and this and that rock, and oh, my daughter has like a whole pile of rocks in the car. And I'm like, oh, you take a look at my front seat because I have 6 or 7 of them piled in the front seat. So it's funny that you're talking about rocks because I have this cute, tiny, tiny little thing, but it's got like a patch of white across the center of it. But it's this tiny, cutest little thing. And I was just going to chime in about scheduling off time to do nothing is really important too, because that's part of what we need to realize that we need it every day. And I think how I've been able to schedule it in, and I'll even wait until the last minute and look at the dog and I thought, oh my gosh, you have not walked today more than 10 feet to the car or 10 feet to the grass to go to the bathroom. We need to walk. So yesterday it was pouring rain. I was sitting in the car and I'm like, what are we going to do? We need to go walking. I drove over to Home Depot and I thought, let's go look at the lighting in Home Depot because I love looking at crystal chandeliers and the new versions they come out with. And I said, let's go. And I rushed her in out of the rain into Home Depot and we walked Home Depot for 15 minutes. And I thought, she needs to walk. So I find when it's easier to do those kind of things when it's not about me and it's about somebody else. So I find it easier if I have to look after the dog. It's helping me and getting out for a walk, but it's about her. But it also is a scheduled thing that I think it needs to happen every day, and I'm trying to be conscious about it because she's getting older now, and I know if a couple of days can go by and we haven't been out for a proper walk because we're in a new build situation where there's mud everywhere and you can't just put her out and let her run around. She might get eaten by a coyote or something because we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But now it's like I'm making a conscious effort to make sure that I get her for a walk. And if I don't have expecting a call, I try to leave the car and the phone in the car and get out with her for a walk, even at 8:45 in the pouring rain. I found a way to do it, and it was quiet. There was no one in the store. It was almost ready to close, and I was able to look at these beautiful crystal chandeliers and see that there's new stuff out. So, and oh, there's one on sale. I want to buy that for my next project.
Oh, this is so exciting. I just had a feeling that your next project is the seed has been planted and it's sprouting.
Yeah, I think so too. It's very exciting.
I think the fern was telling us that by saying it's been busy sprouting a shoot already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, do you all feel it through your body when it's truly your inner guidance, that you feel that God source is speaking to you, or do you hear a voice?
It depends, I guess. I've had experiences with both. Pardon me. Sometimes it's very subtle and very quiet and doesn't even feel like much of anything. It's just like an automatic movement without any thought at all. And then it's sort of in afterwards, I'll kind of go like, oh, that worked out really well. And then I can kind of think back on it and go like, well, that worked out in this, and I can follow the steps almost. And then there are other times where it's almost like I hear a very clear, concise voice in my head going like, do this. Now's the time, do that, blah, 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 blah. It depends.
I find that you mentioned that more than one way. It can be any kind of way. It can be a feeling. It can be a voice. It can be something catches my attention, like a window is open and a curtain moves slightly in the breeze. It's not noteworthy, but at that point, I notice it. Okay, I have to be alert. There's a fresh wind. But all the other times when a window is open and a curtain moves, it doesn't mean anything significant. Or somebody says something. It could be, mm, uh, it could be so many things.
Well, that's there's a distinction there for you, Maria. And if you can elaborate that on, that might help some others. So as you said, there are times where, the breeze comes and you realize the breeze is telling you something.
Yes.
And before you answer that, I'm just going to say I was speaking with somebody last week, and they were talking that they were at a ancient ceremony, as we call them now, indigenous by the UN. And they invited the ancestors from the east. And she said, we were there, and poof, the wind came from the east, and everybody got goosebumps. And then they said, and we invite the ancestors from the north, and then the wind came from the north, and it's like more goosebumps. And so they did this in all four directions, and each time a wind just picked up, a breeze came in, and the ancestors came in. And then when the wedding was all finished, they closed off and said, okay, now we're giving the space to saying goodbye to the ancestors to the east. And it was like whoosh, they were all like sucked away. and I think that's, again, one of those things for a lot of people, it's beyond their comprehension. So can you say more about when you know that breeze is bringing you, let's say, information instead of just a wind that's coming, that most people think, oh, the wind is blowing, I need to shut my window?
It's an inner knowing. It's the hunch, the gut feel, and the attention. So my attention picked out. It comes with an in, but that the wind, the movement of the curtain at that time was an external signal. So just in case I'm not paying, or I'm not picking up the interior signal. There's an external signal. It's like an exclamation mark. Pay attention. And that particular one led to a very profound something. So now I was alert for it. Another time, no leaves were falling yet a few weeks ago. And one green leaf, nothing wrong, not dried out, had fallen right in front of me. Okay, why is this leaf falling when no other leaf? And why is it falling right to me? Okay, I better be alert. And when I got home, there was a significant email. And when I followed up, again, it had but the leaf, uh, okay, here's a clue. The word leaf is identical to the word male in Hungarian. Oh, male. Mail. And it's not, it could be Canada Post, it could be email because of the word. So that was a clue. So I had the advanced knowing, look, either Canada Post or your email. And one email was had very special significance. So anyway, so it's highly personal. You couldn't write a book on it. I mean, this is so personal and culturally sensitive that the word leaf and male are identical words. You cannot write a book about it because it's going to be just like dreams. People write books on dreams. This is the way to interpret. It's so individual. You don't know what that person's life experience is and what those personal clues are. So,
Well, I do feel that that's what we have to keep encouraging people to know is you have to develop this yourself. There's no magic formula. Like in the book that I wrote about, trusting your intuition, the 10 steps, it's basically to get the individual to comprehend what their inner guidance feels like and experiences it. It's, I share some of my experiences, but I always say, like, I can't tell you what to do, and I like tune in, and it's like you've got to have your own experience. It's like you nobody can lift weights for you. It's the same idea. You want to have your own experience, and sometimes by ignoring what you feel to do is part of the experience until you go, oh, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. Why don't I listen next time when I get that prompt? And away we go. And somewhere Kathy got the prompt and changed the thought of how she could get her camera and her microphone working. So I'm going to bring her up now because she has got it. And she looks all so comfortable there. And there you go. Welcome, Kathy. Where are you in the world, darling?
In Toronto.
You're in Toronto too. There we go.
Yeah.
Toronto.
Toronto.
So you've been listening in and backstage. Kathy's been backstage. We're like, so important here. We have a backstage. While we're waiting for her camera and her mic to get, and her makeup to get done. No, just she's her own makeup artist. They haven't beam me up. So did you have anything you wanted to share at this moment that's coming to you about what you feel like when your inner guidance is speaking to you?
Yeah, it's like a combination of, like, you get maybe a sign or something like that, but it's an inner knowing that sign was speaking to you. It could be a voice, or it could be just a feeling, but it's also like a deep inner knowing that that's the voice, your higher self or God or whatever speaking to you. For me, yeah, it's an inner confirmation. It's an inner. It's really difficult to describe. It's like you guys probably already know, but it's an inner knowing of communication that you've hit the mark.
It's like a little light bulb going off in your brain or somewhere in your body that goes like, oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, it is. It's just
Gotcha.
You feel it.
Yes.
Yeah, you really do feel it
intuitively.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's that ding, 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 ding. You hit the mark, like when you're playing those, what are those games that you play when you,
yeah.
Yeah. And it occurs differently for each of us because it can be very, I find, when I'm guided, it's usually a soft guidance, right? When I'm possibly being distracted, I call it like the deceptive broadcast, is the one that's saying, you need to do this. You need to do that. You've got that appointment. You've got that. It's like, my inner guidance is always just pick up the phone, call Joe. Time to leave now. Get in the car, right? Like it's very, very soft and just directive. There is no make wrongs. There isn't, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. There's none of that. All of that stuff is the stuff that I say is the things that distract people from trusting what they feel. And so we can have that going on in our head sometimes, right? We're busy doing things, and to find that way for each of us, it's different to come back into the present. And it could be, as Maria's just like, I'm bringing the fern into the conversation, connecting with the fern. It could be looking at the sun. It could be opening your palm, be putting on some music, playing the drum, looking at the sunrise, the sunset. I mean, there's a multitude, infinite ways that we can get present, because I think that's all that nature's trying to tell us is the gift is in the moment, not tomorrow. No one promised us that, and not in yesterday. It's right here.
Yep.
I notice more when I ask myself if it might be a little bit in my headspace, or when I'm talking to someone and they're wanting clarity for something, or they like, how do I resolve this, or what do I do, what should I do? And it's like, pardon me, excuse me, instead of going, well, I think you should do this, it's more, what do you feel? Stop thinking about what you think you should do. Stop thinking about it and just be quiet for a moment, and just, what do you feel like? If I asked you that, what does that feel like? No, then don't do that. Sometimes it just needs to be really taken out of the headspace and just become very simple and very straightforward and really easy. So, and I notice I get much better, like if for myself, if I'm caught up in a head thing, going like, well, I need to think about this. Say, for example, when we started talking this earlier about these writings that we'll be sorting out, there was always I need to do this and I need to do this, because there was too much pressure and too much thinking of what I should do, rather than listening to when the time is right and what feels right at, in each moment. So,
It's like we were talking the last couple of weeks about silence. Yet, even in the silence, there's always a sound. Like if I could get silent now and it's raining outside, I can get silent and there's many sounds that exist in nature. However, what I did notice, like this week, like I've really felt that there was an energy last week that came along that said to completely calm down, stay still, like just connect, just stay connected to the earth. And what I've noticed this week is here where I am, it's moose season, okay, moose week, and so people actually take the week off. This is their hunting vacation, so they go hunt for a moose. And I've told all the moose they can come stay on my land. And I haven't heard a gunshot, and the forest is extremely quiet. Like there's a whole calmness about the forest that didn't exist last week. And we were talking, I guess, the previous weeks about looking at nature for the signs. What is nature showing us in different ways? And so it's very interesting to me, for me to have that sort of reception last week to say get quiet, and then notice it seems like the whole forest has got that same thing about just stay quiet.
A few months ago, Kathy, Joanne, and I were watching something on Gaia. I think it was Gaia, and it had to do with plants knowing what's happening outside. They know about all life. Like the plants went into distress when an egg was put into boiling water, because and Kathy's going, oh yeah. So because it's another life form that's in distress. And so when the human consciousness, the intent is to go and hunt, nature knows it. And so they're all quiet and going into hiding.
Yeah.
And I watched a while ago, there were a lot of birds in the shrubs here, and a hawk was coming to hunt, and there were no birds. The birds knew there's a hawk, so they all disappeared. So I think nature knows the human intention.
Well, I'm just going to say, I'm going to contrast it to last year. Last year, I never noticed any silence, and there were definitely gunshots going constantly, and people were collecting. I mean, people were getting them, were successfully killing the moose so they could harvest the meat for the winter. And so we had an experience. Joe was with me, and Frederick and Greg and Elizabeth, and we were down in the forest. And one of the things Elizabeth got with the trees is she said, you guys as humans, was the message, sort of, you like are way too compassionate, or way too concerned about everything. And it was the sense of, we are all connected. It is all source, and it's our little, like, I've been here with the trees now for almost 2 years, and well, I guess more than 2 years. And my first one, when I went to go like cut the tree down, it was like, I'm gonna cut a tree down, yeah. And it was so much my experience, the same way that I used to get very fearful about giving my daughters anything other than organic food. and none of the seven highly allergic foods. And I realized there was fear around there. So there was this same fear of trepidation of, oh, am I going to do it wrong? So I really had to spend some time in getting in, going, okay, so you guys know the goal here, like it's communicating with you. The goal is we're going to transform this space. I'm going to live here. We're going to create more community. This is what it is. So some of you are going to go, right? You know that already. Now it's like one step at a time. Where am I going to go? Now, the amazing thing is a lot of people will tell you to take the roots out of the ground, right? Because the roots, in order to ensure they don't grow again, right? To make it more stable, to have more of a firm foundation. Yet they also hold a lot of water, and water is the transmitter of energy, you can say. It's also a part of our emotions. And also the roots, as long as they're there, they're still all connected to the other trees.
Yes.
So my experience is that they have their own internet, right? Yep. They have their own internet, and it's beyond my comprehension of what they're actually saying. And as much as I love Gaia and all the lovely science that people are showing us, how nature is relating to us and what they're doing, I also feel strongly from my own experiences that the one that's doing the experiment can influence what they think is going to happen, because we think we've been harming nature. And we have, in very, in one respect, we have been just, raping and pillaging our mother, just as we've raped and pillaged women and, the ancient cultures, right? We just didn't act in love and kindness. So as we're all coming back to the heart, I think this is part of the process. We just have reverence. So it's not about just coming to chop a tree down. It's like, do I have reverence that you're a life form also? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a part of the equation. When we realize and we bless and we ask permission, they go, yeah, okay, you know what? Yeah, give me 3 more months, could you? Okay, yeah. wait till, I've had ones like, okay, all right. Like I have, some of them know they have to come down now. It's their time, but I'm like, no, all your leaves will come down. We'll do it sometime in the winter when you've contained and all this, you recognize you're moving on. And then I found that some of those couple trees that I want to go down, they've already now been infested, let's say with, I forget what they call it, but one of the beetle title thingies, yellow belly wasps. And so you can see that they're eating at it. And then it's like, okay, so nature is doing its own thing at the same respect. Wow. and utilizing it for whatever it needs before it's going to utilize it for fire for me. Wow. In that sense. Wow, that was a long experience story. So your turn.
That was beautiful. Oh, you're such a beautiful speaker. Beautiful words. And the program Kathy and Joanne and I watched also pointed out that the plants and life forms are okay when they're respected. Oh, they know. If you pray over them or say thank you or explain what's going to happen, they do not go into distress. There's something of a higher frequency going on. And you just gave an example of that.
Similar to the fire as well. I think I said this last week or the week before. Or just tossing wood on to burn from the renovation. But when I'm actually paying attention and I'm putting things on the fire, more wood than maybe just 2x4s, but like actual wood, the smoke a couple of times just came right in my face, and I'm like, oh, so maybe I should be approaching this fire with a little bit more reverence and like putting it on and saying thank you for taking care of these things that I need to disappear from my property right now. And I think I have a little bit different respect for the fire now. And it literally went right in my face a few times, and like, no, like stop and wait till I blow the other direction. And then it was like, oh, okay, I should be more reverent and I should put it on gently, not just toss it on. And like, because the fire is also alive and it's also has its own energy.
There
Oh,
is
yeah. Interesting.
there is a beautifully written book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's by an indigenous woman who's a professor of botany. And beautifully written. The words are lovely, and and uh, and she points out in the way she writes that sweetgrass, some plants require human interaction. Sweetgrass requires human interaction uh, to come back to and start to grow somewhere, and that there are very specific ways to engage it with reverence. But it does require that human reverence, and she explained the particular way uh, for it to thrive.
I'd love to read that. If you could share it with us.
Somebody gave it to me, so I'll look up the author, and I returned it. I returned it yesterday to the person who lent it to me. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass. Maybe you can order it. It's beautiful.
Sounds lovely.
I'll just jump in and share a little story. I was thinking, listening while you were talking about the fire, and like when you were talking about throwing the wood onto the fire and then the smoke coming back at you. So I was thinking, like, being, if you were the fire, if you were to embody being the fire and someone was throwing something at you, it's like a slap in the face almost. And I was just having a bit of a chuckle in my thinking, because the fires come back and go like, how do you like it? With that consciousness, not to be disrespectful, but there's this energetic exchange like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But my story is my mum used to do, she was an energetic surveyor of land, so she could feel when energy was blocked, and she would help people. She can find portals and energy points that needed to be activated and whatnot. And the land that she lived on had very beautiful energy. She'd put a lot of time and energy into it, and was very connected to it. And at different times, she and her friends would have ceremony, and they would activate the fire. And the difference in the land, and even the way that the fire moved, the fire elementals would come through, and she took video and photos of it, and it was just, you could see the before and after effects of the land around it. The energy that came in was so strong and powerful. It was just fantastic. So yes, very, very much the elements know, as you said, Maria, we've taught ourselves not to be acknowledging anything other than what we think as humans is, we are the be all and end all, but there is so much more than that. For all of our knowledge, we know nothing. And it's just the reverence, the honor, the recognition, all of this acknowledgement has been taught out of us and weaned out of us and discouraged for the land. And we are so disconnected, but we think, oh, I'm so spiritual, I know all of this stuff, and I do this, and I eat vegan, and I this, and all of this stuff that we listen to everyone else tell us what we should be doing, and we know nothing. And it is just so much. It's like, like you said, like the ancient civilizations and whatnot, their practices of, if they caught meat, they went into that with reverence first, and thanks for the fact that this life was going to give itself up for their nourishment and their sustainment. And there was this loving exchange of energy, and I feel very emotional about this.
Me too.
Because it's so lost.
Yeah.
It's coming back. I'm saying that as
Yeah, we're waking up.
And it's like when you kind of get connected to it, you can get, like me, I'm getting teary thinking about it, but it's just like, in your heart you feel like, oh God, I really want that. I really miss that.
Yeah.
Really, all you have to do is just get outside. I think
Yeah.
that's why I think that's why because it's cold if when winter comes and it's cold and rainy and I feel like, oh, I'm not going to be able to, maybe that's like the sad part that comes with fall coming, because I'm not going to get outside as much, but there's no need for that. You can dress up warm and you can get outside. There's just maybe not as many butterflies or anything to connect with. So I think that's why I always want to go south, because the dragonflies go south every winter, the hummingbirds go south every winter. Lots of the birds stay here, but not lots of them go south every winter. So I think that's, now that I'm thinking about it, that's maybe the sadness that comes over me is I don't have the ability to connect with all these little tiny creatures because they're all sleeping and they're all, I'm not sleeping because I don't need to hibernate because we have all the luxuries of not having to hibernate. So, but it's, you go out and there's few and far between birds or anything like that to connect with. So I'm kind of getting the gist of that's why I need to go south, because like yesterday I went out and I'm telling you it was 25 or 26 degrees at 8 o'clock at night, and plus the humidity. And I was just having the time of my life just outside on my little mini trampoline. And I was getting dive bombed by this pair of um, dragonflies. And I was never so more happy to see them. And they were, oh, it was just so beautiful. But I think now I'm comprehending not being able to connect the trees.
Yeah.
Same with the trees have all taken their sap and everything gets drawn inside and they take it down to the roots, so to keep the tree alive and keep it down to the roots. And I could see, I get the feeling of being disconnected with nature because it sort of all just disappears. It's making sense that it's coming to that, and it's just coming to that enlightenment during the conversation we're having. It's very interesting. And I think that's probably why if you have plants in your house, or you have essential oils that are alive, if you've got the good quality ones, they're alive, they're vibrating. They can be calibrated. If you have animals in the house, you can still get some kind of connection with nature, just not the same as when everything's up and awake and alive.
My daughter and I this summer, of our first time having an actual garden, they bought me for my birthday a greenhouse, a plastic greenhouse from Canadian Tire. We put it up, and we've been putting our plants and herbs and everything like that. And we're watching our tomato plants growing, and they're still trying to bloom. They're blooming, but they're struggling to give us the tomatoes, because I guess now it's getting to the point where it's a little cold, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to harvest any more tomatoes off of them. But my daughter and I still want to bring the plants in the house, so we're gonna try and figure out a way to grow our tomato plants in the house. We'll do what we can. I mean, it's an experiment, but we're learning so much from it, and it's nice that we're connecting over this.
You
I've
can get
been
some grow lights, and there's also the
Yes.
towers, the towers with the grow lights.
Excellent. Yeah. I really plan on doing this and extending it.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm
You
enjoying it.
still have time outside. It's really tomatoes can still grow until like the first frost, right? So
Wonderful.
my green tomatoes are still like I had a ton, right? When you were out, Joe, were green, and they've become red, and now I've got more green ones, and they're still popping up. So that's the sense. Like for me, I was thinking earlier today, or I had the thoughts come to me earlier today that ancient tribes, a lot of them would do a vision quest for the young males. So as they became a teenager, they would go out for about 4 days into the forest, and they would be in the forest without anything, right? Like, and and I was just kind of contemplating. I'm like, so if people came and lived in my cabin, which isn't that far from civilization, but is still in the forest, without a dog or without a partner, they would still feel triggered. And they're still in like a roofed building and everything in that spec, because that's what I noticed for me. So many fears came up. And I think that for me is the difference of what ancient tribes knew, that you could send somebody out without anything in 4 days and they'd be fine because spirit would take care of them. And we, as I'm going to say, we as still humans go, well, I'll go glamping for a weekend, and that'll give me my experience of nature. And I'll just maybe walk barefoot for a while. And now I'm grounding. Right now I'm forest bathing. We've got all these fancy names. We go wild water swimming, and it's so far removed still from just being with the land. And I feel like that's the gap we're going to watch over our next moments to moments within each individual, because as we recognize that nature does get quiet up here in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, in some places it gets quiet. Like Tanya, your temperature range you have more rain, but she doesn't. If it gets to like 10 degrees Celsius there, it's cold. It's freezing for her. She's got her Ugg boots
I'm laughing at this because I've got a warm
20 degrees. She's got her Ugg boots on, and she's like, it's cold. Okay.
I've got a jacket on because it's raining and I'm feeling cold, and it's 20 degrees.
Yeah. So,
wow.
I like in Costa Rica, as I've said, to being there the first time I was there in rainy season, like it rains, like it just doesn't drip, drip, drip. It rains for weeks, for months. It rains and it rains, and then you can get, and it's damp, and it's rain, and then it stops raining and it has no rain for months. So each part of the planet is like a part of our own bodies. And the liver is different than the heart. So the knee is different than the elbow. And I feel that there is something about where we are native to that we're kind of jive. But then there's also the experience of, like, as Joe was saying, well, maybe she's like more like a hummingbird, and she's just got or a monarch butterfly, and go south for the winter. Or a whale, they follow the flows back and forth. Some of them just stay put, right? Like the bear here will go get quiet and doesn't necessarily sleep all winter when we talk about hibernate, but he will retreat till springtime.
And the bear and the squirrel, all of them will get fat in the fall because they must. It's a necessity. If you're not really good on fat, you have nothing to burn, right?
Wow.
And ancestors used to do that, and they had to, like, for us to make preserves is a hobby. For our ancestors, it was an absolute life necessity. If you don't put something away, and if you don't put those jams away, never mind they're sugary. You have to, there are no freezers to preserve them. They're like, that sugar was the preservative. If you don't do that, if you don't smoke the meat or whatever you have, you're going to starve. You're not going to get through February. And like knitting, woolens, whatever, for us, it's a hobby. It was not a hobby because you had to wear something.
Yeah. And on the bears and stocking up. So the last couple of weeks, they've been devouring the apples here. So it's like all people that didn't want the bears in their yard would take their apples and put them further back in the forest, and you'd go back there. I had a friend who goes, oh, they were having a big heyday. Those, the bear poop there was just huge. and then my girlfriend said she left her house, and there was a bear on the road, and it was, sort of running away from her property. And as she was driving in the same direction. Like the bear's like, she's chasing me and running, kind of starting to run faster. And then she giggled because she goes, I knew I was running so fast. He thought I knew, because when I got back, he had eaten all the apples and had broken the apple tree because he was so big.
That's hilarious.
So it's like, and then for me though, I go, apples. I don't think of eating apples and gaining fat or gaining weight, right? I think of eating pizza. Okay, no. and that is going to put it on. And it baffles my mind, like elephants eat grass, whales eat a bunch of like these humongous animals that are much bigger than me really don't eat anything that I think is really substantial yet. So that doesn't jive with what I get told about food for me when I look at these other large animals and creatures and go, well, they're just eating blueberries and apples. And
But there are lots of partly our body learns in our infancy, and we adapt because wherever you're born and you spend your childhood leaves an imprint. And if you grew up in a vegan culture, you'll thrive. We have the if you live in a culture that is mostly vegetarian with a little bit of meat, which is how I grew up, mostly plant foods, but then there's that little bit of meat with it here and there. Uh, that's when I thrive the best. And now we have, just as we have choices. So it's part of our abundance that we can choose. Are you going to eat paleo? Are you going to follow the alkaline diet? Are you going to follow the this or that or the whichever? Because we have choice. Our ancestors were not given choice. If you were an area where you had to hunt, you hunted. It's like in the yak butter high in the Himalayas, or the Innu eating blubber. They don't have the choice. Are you going to be a vegetarian and not hurt a seal? Uh, right, or in Kenya, you've got the cattle farmers. So we always have to honor the geography and what nature provides, or the buffalo people in the west of Canada and the U.S. What is it that nature provides?
Apples and apples and more apples. So I got today.
Look at that.
well, look at all the apples. That's so great.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And they were just sitting on the side of the road with this big tree, and they were right down the street from my old house, so I know exactly where to look. And
Wow,
yeah,
that's
they're
nice.
fantastic. I know, fantastic. So there's literally free food everywhere. But funny enough, for me, I'm really addicted to and attracted to apples because I grew up with my aunt owning an orchard, an apple orchard.
Wow.
So for fall, to me, it's like, yeah, it's a royal apple pig out. And that's exactly what I got right here.
And apples have extremely high frequency. That
Oh.
there's a reason an apple a day keeps the doctor away. They're very high frequency.
Wow.
They've got other goodies.
Yeah. Yeah, they have.
Good to
You
know.
can eat a few of the seeds as well. Apparently, the seeds have a trace of arsenic in them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you eat the seeds as well, I eat the whole apple. If I maybe not these ones because they're kind of a little bit messy, but you can get a trace of arsenic. It's actually very good for your system, believe it or not. Mm-hmm.
Well, you heard it here. Eat arsenic. No, just kidding. No. We do with a disclaimer. No. I would like to pick up this conversation next week on moving on ancient ways and how we're all guided through the land. It's been wonderful being here with you all, and
Beautiful.
I'm feeling the call to convene more and more with the land all the time. So I'll look forward to hearing what happens between now and next week. Thanks.
Lovely. Very
Well,
nice.
So this is
Thank you, everyone.
Glad I joined. Bye, ladies.
Bye.